Hi Joy, I'd like you to pass this video on to your sisters and brethren. I'm going to show you and give you a little guided tour of the north end of Hinton, which is called Church End, or used to be known as Church End. I'm going to show you around some of the area where Bridgettines would have come and stayed in the 1400s to the 1500s. Because today there's nothing left, no trace of them, you wouldn't know, it's just these tiny little references in the records. So I will hopefully show you a good bit of Hinton. Another day I'll make you some more videos of the other end of Hinton, Hinton Hall and places like that. But for today we're just looking at the Bridgettines. Okay. We're going to start at St Andrew's Church in Hinton. This is our main parish church, and it's been standing since 12th century with a bit of 13th century addition. And we're at the north end of Hinton. So Hinton used to be two separate settlements, Church End up here on this bit of high ground, and then it slopes down and got a bit boggy in between, and then it was Mill End as it started to rise up onto the Gog Hills again. So we're at Church End, and we're just looking at Church End today. And there's the high street, goes down to the shops in the centre of the village today because it was all drained. And that's going north out of Hinton. And you can see our old church lamp and the sign. And this is Coldham's Lane, so if you look on a map you'll be able to get a rough idea where you are. Now, it was about 1406 when the Bridgettines were first over here. So that means this church would have been standing at the time, and they would have seen this. We can't go in tonight, but another day I'll do a video and take you inside so you can see what it's all like. We'll wander through the churchyard, and I'm going to take you to some places where there may have been a monastery. Although it's thought to have never been actually built here, there are some clues that there might have been something. Let's take you through here. I don't want to talk over the whole video for you because I want you to just be able to hear the nice sounds. There's quite a lot of nice bird sounds up this end of the village, surprisingly. It'll be a bit busy. Right, we'll go out onto Church End. So that road there is called Fulbourn Old Drift. It's the old road, the original road that ran all the way down to Fulbourn village. You might like to see some of the things that we have going on in the church. All sorts of nice things and helpful things. So this is where we want to look at, Church End. Now can you see Fulbourn Old Drift? We've got sort of kind of crossroads here, and this is a very old crossroads, and this is a very old routeway. We're going to go down the modern bit to start with, and I'm going to bring you back and we'll go through the old part. So we know by about the 1400s that devotion to St Bridget of Sweden had become really popular in England. This is like the early 1400s. And one of the greatest promoters of it in England was this chap called Sir Henry Fitzhugh, Lord of Ravensworth. And it was him who introduced it into Britain in the first place. But he had lots of property all over the place. But one of the things he had was the manor of Hinton, which of course is here. Cherry Hinton. Now the cherry part of Hinton we don't think was added as a prefix until about 1500 due to the abundance of cherry trees. But before that, in the Domesday Survey, it was always called Hintona or Hinton, which means the Tom part is a Saxon place name indicator, so perhaps it got its name during the Saxon period, and the Hin part can mean land on the higher ground, or interestingly it can mean the place of the monks or nuns. Now we're going to come down here because we're at the end of the churchyard. We've got some modern houses here, and can you see this? This one here sticking up. Well, that's what we're interested in. So this building that we're coming up to, it's all encased with Cambridge white brick. Look, you can see a lot of these old bricks in the wall from buildings before where the bricks have been reused. But it's a bit deceptive because that building there is actually a timber framed building, so it's much older than what it looks like. Look at it. Now this is Uphall Farm. It was called later on, it's known as Uphall Farm, but actually there's a lot of evidence to say this was actually Uphall Manor, the actual manor house. All of these houses wouldn't have been here, but this old building has been on the maps for a long time. And there were 4 manors in Cherry Hinton in the medieval period, sort of 1400s. There was Uphall Manor, potentially, most likely this building here. There was a smaller satellite manor called Mallett's Manor, which I think is over here. And then there was down in Mill End, Netherhall Manor and Rectory Manor. Now look, this little causeway that we're going through now, so we're right opposite Uphall Manor, and then we come through here. This is all just a very overgrown little wildlife area. I'm really worried it's in danger of being sort of left to neglect and turned into more housing. But we come across here, this little bit we're standing on here is a little causeway, and on the maps, all this bit on the old maps over here was called Mallett's, and I think this is the site of where Mallett's Manor would have stood. There's lots of earthworks, I'll show you in a moment. Pathway leading off down there. The original Church End Road that we've just come off of. And look at this, you have to go down this slope. And it's tricky on the camera, but take my word, it's very lumpy bumpy. Look, it slopes down over there. In the 80s and 90s there was a little bit of play equipment on here. And listen to all these birds. This is always a great spot to come to hear lots of different birds. But look at it, it's very undulating up and down. And I did an earthwork survey in here about 20 years ago and wrote a really amateurish report on it. But what I found was that running through here is a ditch, running around the back is a ditch, all filled in now, but it shows that it was a moated site. And this being called Mallett's, and us in Cherry Hinton having no manor houses remaining above the ground, this is the spot where I think Mallett's Manor was. So one day I'd like to do a community dig and see if we can find out for sure. But the point was, Sir Henry Fitzhugh, Lord of Ravensworth, when he was in Sweden, he went over to Sweden in 1406 and he visited Vadstena. Now we visited Bridgettine, I think I'm saying that right, or Vadstena, is it? Not really sure, you can correct me. But it was on the feast of St Andrews. Now isn't that interesting, because we have St Andrew's Church in Hinton. And it was when he was over there in 1406, he declared that he wanted to found the religion in England, or the monastery of the Rule of St Saviour. And he requested that 2 brothers be sent to England for that purpose. And he granted his manor at Hinton, which is this one here, it was Uphall Manor, for this purpose. So he gave over Uphall Manor. Now it doesn't necessarily mean the manor house, which you can just see through the trees there. It could have been Mallett's Manor, which was part of it. Or it could have been the lands or the money from the manor. He produced a charter, which was 28th of November 1406 to the Abbess of Vadstena for the foundation, building and perpetual support of such a monastery vested in his manor of Hinton near Cambridge. So we know this was planned. He really wanted to bring this over here. Now the bit I'm on now, I just want to show you here. So Mallett's Manor over there, and the bit we're standing on here runs, Church End runs right alongside us. And this is actually the original road, the original Church End. This is a holloway. You can see there's banks going up the side here, bank up here, bank up here, and holloways are created when there are carts and horses and traffic going down, and it wears the ground down. I mean, you see really fantastic ones down south in Devon and so on, but we have this marvellous great big holloway here. I don't think anyone realises what it is, and you can just see the houses through there. So the road, the modern road, is running alongside this. There's another theory that I had a while back, and I did try and look into it, and I still want to look into it, is that could this be one of the Cambridgeshire dykes? That's a whole other subject and a whole other thing to look at another day. But they're great big huge bank and ditched defensive earthworks that run across the county. But in any case, this is definitely part of this old routeway that ran once into Fulbourn. Hang on a minute. I don't know if this is going to pick it up very well. That slopes up. Very excited about the slopes because we're in Cambridge and there isn't very many slopes. Carry on down here and we'll come out onto near to where we started. So just over there is the high street again, south and north, and this is all mainly council housing, really nice little bungalows. Look how nice and green it is though. It is a nice little spot. It'd be a real shame if they try and build on that. And look through there, there's St Andrew's churchyard where we came out of earlier. Right, I'm going to take you back down here and we'll cut through again. Right, we're going to walk back down the holloway and I'm going to keep quiet for a little while just so you can hear all these noisy birds. So back past what is probably the site of Mallett's Manor, carrying on down the old routeway. Now so it was 1406 when the idea to bring the monastery over here was put in place. But it was in 1407 that a canon of St Saviour, a chap called Hemming, came over and he stayed. Now it's likely that he stayed then in Lord Fitzhugh's place at Uphall Manor. He went back in on the 1st of November in 1407, but he died on his way back. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened, whether he got ill or illness of some sort. But anyway, on the 6th of April 1408, 2 other brothers came over. That was John Peterson, who was a priest, and Catil, who was a deacon. Now, that's all we have on the records that we know of. I want to do a lot more research on this. But it's interesting because they came over in 1408. Well, Peterson didn't go back until 1416, that's 8 years later. And Catil didn't go back until 1421. So they were here for some time. So were they staying in Uphall? Had they started to build a monastery using all the money and promises they were given that they could found an abbey here or monastery? We just don't know. But there are a few little clues that maybe it was started. One thing that happened though was that the king then built Sion Abbey down in London, and that took over as being the main foundation. So perhaps they didn't build anything, perhaps they just stayed here, planned to, and the idea was abandoned. We just don't know enough. So we're now carrying on down this old routeway. But really, as far as the Bridgettines and Cherry Hinton, we know they came here, we know there was ideas to found this monastery, and we know that brothers came over and stayed here. And that's it, that's all the records we have. We don't know how many others followed. Did further nuns come over? We just don't know. But we do know that they were here for some time. Now look, we come out of this old route where it sort of merges back into the main church end. Look at this lovely old tree. Look, there would have been lots of these about, all pollarded. Yeah, pollarded, not coppiced. Coppiced is down the bottom and pollard's at the top, isn't it? And you can see all the sort of 1970s council estate built over that side. And there's looking back up there. Right, so what I'm going to do now, take you out onto the modern church end. You can look back there at Uphall Manor. And I'm going to take you down the other end of this road now to show you a few other little bits. So we're just a little further down. There's the old routeway there. And there's March Lane. Actually an old ancient routeway that carries on further across those fields. And we're coming up to what would have been the beginning of the village green at this end of Cherry Hinton. You see this little triangle that's left of grass. That's all that's left of the original village green. You get a nice triangular green like this, and sort of 1400s or before, you'd have all your cottages around it facing it, and a gate at the skinny end, which would be this end. Keep your cattle in overnight, watch over them, and you could take them out. You can tell that this would be the way they would be driven. So the drove road would run this way because the point of the triangle is here. Now once this green would have extended right under where all these houses are. They wouldn't have been here. Or there would be the odd ones dotted on the edge of the green. There's one old cottage left here. There were several. There was once a great lovely house in there as well. I'll just show you this one. It's not to do with the Bridgettines or Sion Abbey, but there we have Mafeking Cottage, 1901. Of course the cottage is a lot older. but it commemorates the Boer War and the siege of Mafeking. And this was all a farm. Little monkey puzzle tree. Still continuing on down Church End. Let's cross over. Here we go. Right, let's turn right here, because this is the building I want to show you. This is the old Rosemary branch, and it's the original pub. It's the new Rosemary branch, which most people remember was built around the corner on the main road, but that has gone now as well, actually. And you can see this is a really old building. And even its name hints to something very old, because old pubs tend to have herbal names. So Rosemary is a herbal name indicating an older pub. And also it's, you split that name up, Rose and Mary. There's a lot of tales about this pub. It has a cellar that you can go into. Well, obviously you can't now because it's somebody's house, but once upon a time. And in the back garden, years ago, before the estate was built that's around the back, the owners let us go and have a look around, me and my pal, Dave Curry, another archaeologist. And on their rockery was loads of interesting worked stone, but it was all ecclesiastical stone. And just in their rockery. So it always made me wonder if this was perhaps the site of where the monastery was starting to be built, or the first incarnation of Sion Abbey in England. And in fact, when they built the estate on the land, you can just see the houses through there, they found hundreds and hundreds of Saxon burials. It was a massive Saxon graveyard. So there's a lot of secrets at this end of Cherry Hinton, a lot of things we don't understand about what went on here. But my hunch was always that the Bridgettines founded their monastery around here, around the old Saxon site where there was a little chapel and church. But of course, you know, knowing now that the first brother came over in 1406, well, the other church had already been built by then. So really, we need to explore that Mallett's Manor site, see what's there. Right, I'm going to take you back down the other end because I have something really cool to show you, and I'm really excited to let you know about this. So now we're on the high street in Cherry Hinton still, but at the very north end is the roundabout that leads out past Marshall's Airport and out onto the A14. So we're at the very top of Church End, and I have something to show you. I'm really excited. So this is the new development of Springstead, which is going up, and it will continue up there, and it'll become like another settlement of Cherry Hinton in its own right. But when it was being planned and as development started, I was asked to contribute some names based on the history of the area, because they wanted it to mean something, just not pick any random old names for a development. So I wrote a document explaining everything that I knew history-wise, archaeology-wise, that was here in the past, particularly at this end of Cherry Hinton at Church End. And so luckily they chose so far they've been choosing all the names of the ones I've suggested. Now, I suggested quite a lot, and there's a lot of rules around naming a development and all kinds of things you wouldn't think of, like what ambulances prefer. I think it's not streets named with an A, and emergency services, things like that. So there's lots to consider. But the Springstead part comes from the fact there was a spring at this end of Hinton, just over there. And this is, of course, a homestead by the spring, so they've used that name for that reason. I'm going to take you down here. Not sure if you can see that yet. Let's cross over. And the big news for you is that they have named this patch Bridgettine Square after your order that stayed here in the 1400s. And it's all this road, it goes all the way down here, and like the name suggests, it's a square, so it goes all the way around there, all around the back, and forms this large square. And so repeated en route around this square is the sign, Bridgettine Square. So I hope that is a nice thing for you all, and I hope that you'll be really, really pleased to be recognised in this way and to be remembered, and that part of your history is remembered here in Hinton, even in these modern new houses. There's this lovely link to the past, and I think that's important because anyone moving into somewhere so new, they need to have a sense of history, really. Give them a little bit of identity. There you go. There's loads of them, repeated and repeated. Now, just as a little bonus extra at the end, thought we'd come back into the St Andrew's churchyard, and I thought I'd just show you a tiny bit more of it. Now look, do you see this slope in the ground here? It goes all the way along there and then it's flat. This is actually, and you can find this in a lot of churchyards, this is the edge of the original churchyard. When it got too full, they've had to extend out here. And I'll show you. Go down here. Now if I can get that to show better on camera. There's a definite slope. And so we're now walking around the original churchyard. You see how it turns this corner here? You see it fairly well there. See? So original churchyard, and then the big old extension, which is still fairly old. A lot of the masters of Peterhouse College are buried over there because they held the head vows of the church for hundreds of years. There's one grave I'll just show you. It's not to do with Bridgettines, but you know, it's just interesting. And I know that you find it difficult you know, to travel now and to come up, so I thought I might show you one or two spots that will make sense for future videos I make for you. So here is the grave for Mary, Elizabeth, Coblin and John Oakes. Now John Oakes built Cherry Hinton Hall. He was a surgeon in the army in India, and he came back and worked at the original Addenbrooke's Hospital, which was on Trumpington Road back in the day in Cambridge. And after enclosure he bought up lots of land in Cherry Hinton down the other end, and he had his grand mansion house built of Cherry Hinton Hall. So lots of people think, oh, that's the old manor house, but it isn't. It's only from, it was built in the 1830s. And the little bird. And that really is the big grand house that we have left in the village. I can show you that on another date. And the ladies are all in there in the hall at the moment having their WI meeting. And can you see that stone there, that white stone? That's chalk. It's high quality chalk called clunch, and that's what a lot of the buildings would have been built out of. There's a big chalk quarry down the other end of the village, and some of the chalk was used to build, well, Cherry Hinton clunch was used to build Ely Cathedral and Peterhouse College. But unless it's lime washed and the traditions of looking after it properly are kept up, it weathers away quite easily, which is why we don't have so many of the older cottages left in the village, because they've just decayed and crumbled away, particularly after brick was discovered and started to be used instead. Anyway, that's just a little added bit of info for you.